Hi, this is Garden Girl Nancy Damiano with this week's episode of Scrap Your Stash, brought to you by 2peasinabucket.com. On this week's episode, we're going to use envelopes as a design element and then some stitching to add some impact to the overall design of the page. This is like an everyday type of photo for me, one of my favorites, and an everyday layout. I like to mix up everyday layouts with a lot of travel and events because I think it tells a fuller story in my scrapbook. Now, this is the collection I chose. This is Front Porch by Pebbles. And I love this color palette and I like the bold prints on it. This is also from Me to You, also by Pebbles. And my thought was to mix them up because I think they really do match, more or less. And then some of the embellishments, these are the envelopes that are going to be a main element. Some flair. Enamel dots always, some pins, and some chipboard Vintage Bliss. And then these are some stickers from that line, and then some thickers for my title. Let's get started on the page. The first thing I do is flip through all of the patterns that I like, and I'm going to decide on a color palette. And I'm also looking for a mix of small and large prints. So already in my left hand, I've collected my favorite 3. And then I'm looking for another little pop of color. And my first thought was to use this stripe. And the reason I set it aside was because I thought it would overshadow the color in the envelopes that I'm going to use. And so I stayed with a pale gray, hot pink, and aqua. And I am a matchy scrapper. So, yep, that hot pink is in my niece's bathing suit, so that's why I picked that. And now just deciding on how my layers are going to be arranged. So this is a pretty challenging part of the layout for me. That large print, I want to keep it as a small ratio of the entire page because if not, it would take over too much. So that's why you see only a little bit of that peeking out. Then I have my aqua. I like grids and I like lines like that. I use them all the time. And now you'll see that I added a wood grain paper. That's just an old scrap that I had. It's from Studio Calico. And I keep those scraps because you'll see how the photo pops and it also makes that sort of pale gray and the aqua also stand out. I'm going to go through the envelopes. There's 3 envelopes of each pattern, and the only difference is the enclosure there. Some are scalloped and some are straight envelopes. And I love this one. I love that oval. It's going to add a little more shape to the design. And so now I'm just looking for the straight envelope just to keep them uniform. And I'm going to use one of each pattern. So I thought I was going to use them flat, but I think I like the triangle part of the envelope showing. It adds a little more texture and you can really see it's an envelope. Now I'm going to base the whole page on a piece of spare light pink cardstock that I had. I had some writing on the back. Since I'm not positive how the layers are going to go, and I know that this pattern paper is only going to show about 2 inches at the top. And I want to keep that strip, that hot pink strip at the bottom. That's what I'm deciding. Am I going to keep that at the bottom or not? And in the end, I decide, yes, I do want that. It adds a nice little border to the bottom of the page. And I'll take a few minutes here to get my layers down correctly, or the way I like them. So I like a lot of horizontal and vertical lines layered one on top of the other, and that gives you a lot of texture and lets you get a little peek at each pattern without it becoming too overwhelming. And I do want those envelopes to stand out and the photos, so that's why I'm going to place those on the wood green pattern paper. Now that photo is kind of floating there and it needs something else to ground it to the layout. So I cut a strip of the hot pink pattern paper. It has a really small flower print to it. And it just will draw your eye right to that photo and keep it from floating around on that wood green paper. It also adds another vertical line to an otherwise pretty horizontal layout. Once I have my photo in place, I don't like to pick it up because I can never get it down exactly where I had it. So that's why you'll see me glue it down right there. And then the focal design element of the page are the 4 little envelopes. So I want to make sure that they're pretty straight. I fiddle around with these quite a bit until I get the spacing exactly how I want it. Now I'm going to put my journaling in here, right in that hot pink pocket. I did that at the end of the video. And the only pocket that is right side up is that gray one because I want that oval element to show. Now that I have all the pockets down, I'm looking for something else. How do I make this page pop? How do I make this design really interesting? And what I decide to do is to add some stitching. Now I've seen a lot of designers use stitch titles all over their photos and other elements on the page. So I took that a little bit further and decided to use a giant heart and just lay it right on top of all the paper layers, photos, design elements, the entire thing. The heart I cut out with my silhouette. It's a pretty basic shape. You can do it freehand and just cut it out if you don't have a silhouette. And I also thought if you have, my other thought with this was to do a big star, but the theme of this page is grateful, so I thought a heart would fit better. Now you just want to carefully center it and just look at the elements that you're going over. I had to shift the heart a little bit over to the left because if not, I would have gone over an important part of the photo with the stitching, and I didn't want that to happen. So I carefully trace it out twice just so I can really see it. And there you go. Now you can see exactly where I'm going to stitch. Now before I stitch, just to make things easier, I will use a piercing tool and make the little holes so that when I sew, it's just so much faster. And right there, I'm going through lots of layers, so you see it's a little bit difficult. You can use, to keep the stitches uniform, you can use a ruler and make sure they're each 1/4 of an inch or what have you, but I don't have the patience for that, so I'm just going to eyeball it and more or less 1/4 of an inch. You want to make them pretty wide. You don't want tiny little stitches because the stitching isn't going to show up very well if you make them too small or too tight, and also it's going to take you forever to sew. And there you can see where I got started. Now at this point you'll go around and erase the pencil mark so you don't see it through your stitching. I've already gone and done most of the heart. You can see all the little holes, and you can see exactly how the design is going to lay out. And next I just used white embroidery floss. And I'm going to do a back stitch. You can start anywhere where you want, doesn't really make a difference. And I'm going to speed this up a little bit. Now the sewing took me about an hour to do, and I don't do this during my scrapbooking time. I do it during my TV time because it's a little bit relaxing, and that way I don't waste any of my actual designing time to do sewing. Just do a few stitches here. I wish that I sewed that fast. And then on the back, I don't make knots because you're going to have a really bumpy page. So I just leave it loose and tape the ends down. And there you can see the spacing. That's about 1/4 of an inch or so. And here I finished all the stitching. And then you can see how it goes just right over all the layers in the photo, and it ties everything together, and it adds that little extra something to the page. Now up at the top, I've left a spot for my journaling. It's a perfect spot. These are boardwalk thickers, and I like how nice and tall and thin they are. And then the theme of my page is grateful, because I'm grateful to have these 3 little ones in my life, and I am going to write them a note and put it in the envelope. I've gotten really good at spelling backwards from the scrapbooking. Sometimes I make mistakes, but here I did pretty good. That way I just know that it's in the exact spot that I want it. And now to decorate. Now I know I want this gray envelope to really stand out because I love the oval shape, and it's also on the outside of the layout. So I'm going to use some flair here. I end up using the flair from, these are from 2 Peas in a Bucket. They're exclusive to our store. And I'm just going to use 2 or 3 that I like here. I love the heart because it matches and it has a heart, repeating that theme. Thought about the globe because I like the blue, but the globe really doesn't have anything to do with the page. And I'd like to write here right now as well. And then to add another layer right in this envelope, I'm going to use a pin. These are by Jelly Bean Soup. And I like the color, and I like how it matches the little envelope, the floral envelope on the top. And I'm just going to thread that through the stitching to get it on there. And I like the pink flare because the white flare I felt was fading too much into the white of the envelope. Now my next spot is right below the picture. There's sort of an odd spot there, so I'm going to try a sticker. This is from Pebbles from the front porch line. And I do like the chalkboard, but I wasn't sure about that. This sticker I like was too large. I like this one because it said something about a note, and I think that went well with the envelope, but it was a little too thin. And then this chipboard is from Simple Stories Vintage Bliss. I love the saying on it. I love that it repeated the grateful. And it was the perfect size and shape for the spot. It also came with this little frame, which I was undecided about. So I don't glue down my embellishments. I like to place them out first and then take a look at them all together. And then I'll go back and put them down later. Now I'm looking to add a little bit of height to the photo, a little more embellishment, another spot, and I'm using Tidbits by October Afternoon. This is something that's pretty old in my stash. This is from Cakewalk, And I chose it because it has the soft colors, the pale pink and aqua. And I'm just going to tuck those right behind that photo. So another layer of paper adds height to the photo and a little more color too. I like this frame, so I'm going to stick it down. I did decide that the other extra chipboard frame was too large for the space, so I'm not going to use that. And I actually shifted that chipboard in between there. I layered it over the photo. And the reason I did that was so that I could add some enamel dots. And I'm going to add them to the top and the bottom of the ribbon. And again, they frame out that focal point photo that I really want you to look at. And it adds weight to the ribbon as well. Now, one last look. I always take a last look. And the only place that I could fit something was here in this lower right-hand corner. And so because I have grateful up at the top going left justified off of the picture, I wanted to add another vertical line at the bottom of the picture. And I did that with the 1, 2, 3 little chipboard pieces from Vintage Bliss. It was from the same one as that smile chipboard piece. And that completes the layout. I hope that helps you the next time you have some envelopes on hand. Thanks for watching.